you're looking for an initial qualification, you might be thinking that Celta is the way to go. And in today's video, we're going to help you understand what to expect so that you're not frustrated with the experience. So, roda a vinheta, vejo você já.
As far as it goes, there are certain things that I think a person who's thinking about the Celta, like, what is in this course? What can I expect from this course? What would you say is the first thing that a teacher can expect from the Celta?
Lots of practice. Everything in Celta is hands-on. You're going to have a couple of input sessions, but at least in my experience, they were not lectures. They were all workshop-ish. So every activity you do in a course is hands-on. So there are assignments to do, lesson plans to write, lessons to teach, lessons to observe, feedback to give and to receive. It's a lot of it's really learn by doing, the approach taken in Celta, not learn by reading or learn by watching. It's really learn by doing, I believe.
Which I think is intentional, like from Cambridge, that you will do the Celta and that there is a learning curve happening. So much so that I think that even for the teaching practices, when you have to do what matters is that maybe you're not doing so well in the beginning, but that you show there's a learning curve that you were getting better, right? Yeah, I agree. The lots of hands-on, everything is very practical. In terms of understanding of teaching, I think that a lot of people think that the Celta is something very theoretical. It is not really. You don't open so many of those doors. I don't think there is a lot of theory there. There is basic understanding of the most common things in teaching, things that are held in ELT as being common knowledge and good practices to have in the classroom. For example, I think that I don't even remember talking about the PPP in the course. The lessons are clearly a PPP. But I do remember that when we had a listening or a reading lesson, and we're like, okay, and I asked my tutor, okay, so is this a PPP? And it's not, because PPP is used for language lessons. It is used for teaching grammar and vocabulary. That's what the PPP is used for. When you move on into listening and reading lessons, you clearly have the development cycle. So that's in the course, and I think it's very, very important that it is there because it makes a tremendous difference.
Lots of frameworks, right? Test, teach, test. You're going to see some sort of PPP. You might see the control practice, freer practice, input, pre, while, and post for reading and listening, frameworks for writing lessons. I think this was one of the biggest takeaways for me, these frameworks, these lesson skeletons, that once you learn and really internalize them, you stop planning lessons from scratch. Like there's no lesson from scratch anymore, right? It's always, at least for me, it's always based on a framework. Today I want to teach some test, teach, test kind of lesson. I'm not starting from scratch because the framework is already there, right? So I can adapt the framework here and there if I want to. It's not scratch. I feel that these frameworks sped up my planning process by 80% at the time. Nowadays, I feel that, and I'm not trying to gloat or anything, I can plan a lesson in 30 seconds using the frameworks that we learn in Celta. I find that amazing, like, because all the time you free up from planning lessons used to do anything else. I think it's. Yeah, carry on.
I was just gonna say that how you deal with course materials, it improves in the Celta. Your understanding of EOT materials, it does get better. When you were able to look in the book and I know this part is one lesson, this part is another lesson, that does get better in the Celta. And also there's one thing about authentic materials, because you do some reading there about that, and it is helpful as well.
If you've been following our channel for some time, you might have seen the Reacting to Course book series. A lot of what we say there, this is a lead-in. This is what a controlled practice. This is presentation. This is inductive. This is deductive. This is freer practice. This is pre-reading. All of this is learned during the Celta, and this is assessed and used in Delta Module 1 in the future. So this is why I said in the previous video, I thought that the Celta was absolutely transformational for me. And I feel that if you're a teacher who hasn't got like a master's degree in teaching, you should take the Celta if you want to keep on teaching and if this is your goal in life. If you have a master's degree, go for Delta. But if you don't, Celta is an amazing course, and Cambridge should sponsor us because of this video. But really, it's an amazing course.
We are not getting paid for this series.
Not yet, Walter.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, we have an entire series reacting to course books and things that might relate your, taking the Celta. Not only that, but we also have an entire series on planning lessons, which is combination to go with this, with your, if you're taking the Celta, check it out. Check out those videos. They're up here. I'm going to leave them in the cards over here. It's going to be very profitable to you, I'm sure. The next topic, Bruno.
Yeah, I was going to talk about feedback because I feel that because of this approach of learning by doing, feedback is the other side of the coin, right? It's not just practice that will help you develop your teaching skills. It's actually feedback on your practice that leads to development, in my opinion. So the thing with Celta is that we teach 8 classes, if I'm not mistaken, and you're going to get feedback. Yeah, exactly that, right? You're going to get feedback from your tutors and from all the other teachers in your group because they watched that class. There were 3 groups in my Celta, around 7 people in each. Every lesson I taught, I would get feedback from the tutor, the other 6 teachers who were watching the class. So it's a lot of feedback. This is why I feel the course is so powerful and so transformational. And to add to the learning curve you were talking about, Walter, even though we had all of the classes bulked up together in a month, a lot of time to process things, or I felt that every class, from one class to the other, you could see development in the whole group, in the whole cohort of teachers as a whole. From lesson to lesson, you could see the improvement of lessons based on the feedback that we were getting. Expect lots of feedback. Expect some people freaking out because of feedback. Expect some people challenging feedback that they receive, and try not to be one of those people. So when you're getting feedback, listen, smile, say thank you, and then process it when you get home.
Absolutely. Bruno, one more that I think is just, and this might be one of the biggest takeaways, it is how the Celta may impact your language awareness as a teacher. Because I believe it's the second writing assignment that you have to analyze language. And mind you, in every TP, every teaching practice, you were going to have that session, and that changes the way you think of language as a teacher. When you're thinking, I was like, oh, okay, so this is meaning and appropriacy, or meaning and use, and then you have pronunciation, and then you kind of, because I don't think you actually need to learn much in terms of phonology during the Celta. I don't think it's expected of you, but I think it's a great opportunity for you to take that step and actually go deeper into that area of language. But then there's also the grammar, the more grammatical side of things, like the way you approach grammar, because you're writing your CCQs and you have to think very deeply and consider things that you might not be used to. So that was a big thing for me when I took the Celta, which was, I think, because I hadn't taken any course as such in a long time. And then I think there are habits, good habits that you develop throughout the course. And asking CCQs is one of them. And I'm already linking language awareness to something else, which is the techniques that you learn in the Celta. Do you have more examples of techniques that we needed to develop and that become very, habitually speaking, they are very useful in the life of an EFL teacher?
I think concept checking questions, right? CCQs, as you were saying. And it's a technique that I use every class, basically. Pretty much every class. But for example, we learn instruction checking questions, ICQs, which is, in my opinion, very overrated. I feel that it's mostly patronizing to students. I did it in the Celta because ICQs, for those, ICQs is when you give students instructions. So in pairs, well, not in pairs, individually listen and take notes of the sentences that are, I don't know, false, right? And then after you say that, you get to say, are we doing this individually or in pairs? And they say, individually. Do you have to take notes or do you have to memorize? And take notes. Do you have to take notes of the true sentence or the false sentence? So you see, it can get very patronizing very, very easily. And I know that in my experience, ICQs during the Celta, they were not mandatory. They were only encouraged only when these instruction checking questions would really help the development of the lesson. But I know, for example, when my wife took her Celta, she had to ICQ a couple of times. Every instruction was...
It was compulsory.
It was compulsory. So she had to ask ICQs, and at least three ICQs or two ICQs. I don't remember the number, but I remember it was compulsory. And it is useful, but there are better ways of checking instructions, in my opinion.
We have a very similar view on that. I think that, especially for lower levels, the ICQs are actually very useful, especially if you have a group that has stronger students, weaker ones. The weaker ones you get the feeling that when you start an activity, they're lost. The ICQ is the one thing you can do that is going to prevent students from going, o que é pra fazer mesmo? So if you ICQ in a way that is relevant, that's not going to happen. So it is useful.
I get the feeling that if you have to ask ICQs, it's because you're giving poor instructions. So if you know that these instructions are going to be tricky for students, model. Ask a student to model the activity with another one.
Modeling is another one of the techniques.
Oh yes, sure.
That you get in the Celta, and it's just so much better, so much more useful
than giving
instructions or doing ICQs. So I'd rather do modeling at every activity. But yeah, sometimes it's not really practical or necessary. Plus, why would you ICQ something such as a multiple choice? Right? Like, just listen, choose one, and then there you go. So be careful you got to be careful not to undermine the student that way. But I think what you said was, and being critical about the techniques. One more thing, this is creating your language and reducing your teacher talking time. I mean, when the teacher is talking anything that is not, well, if you're going to go crashing here, then according to crashing, then a lot of the teacher talking time is actually, it's meaningful to the student. So what I mean is that when you're doing something that we call running commentary, you're talking and giving unnecessary comments and not meaningful at all. That's just unnecessary teaching talking time. It's just noise.
And I don't want to extend on what to expect from Celta. I think we got it covered. But one thing that I feel that is gaining confidence in my teaching skills. I mentioned in the previous video this doubting yourself and imposter syndrome kind of thing. When I got the Celta, I felt like, okay, Cambridge says I can teach, so I can teach. So
validation.
If I'm good enough for Cambridge, I'm good for this.
So validation, right? You're looking for validation, and in terms of imposter syndrome, having this certificate might change everything. Game
it's a boosting confidence, right?
It does, and why wouldn't it, right? Because you put on so much effort to do this course, right? I think we got a wrap. Yes,
right.
Teachers, if you haven't subscribed, down below. Click, subscribe, comment, like the videos, and share with your friends who are teachers. And maybe your mother or grandmother. Anybody
right. Why not? She could take the Celta if she has a C1 level of English. Right? And because, but you know this. I've been talking to my wife about our son is taking English classes after class, and he's going to be fluent in English soon, I hope, right? Because we speak a lot of English at home. My wife and I, we speak more English with each other than Portuguese, really. She has beautiful English, and then I take advantage of that to improve my English. We talked, we were going to buy Davi a Celta when he is old enough, so that we don't know if he's going to be an English teacher, what he's going to work with in life. But imagine going to university with a Celta and being able to work at an English school and make some money and do a competent work, teach good classes, make some money, and then decide what to do in life.
Wow.
But I feel it's a great investment.
You guys are thorough planners, aren't you?
Well, I mean, why not? It's a lot of money, but in a month, he will be a competent teacher. Maybe buy his own car. I don't know. So we will probably not have money to buy him a car, but a Celta? No.
But that's independence, right?
Yes,
that's
it is.
Fostering independence. Yeah.
Well, sorry for the divagando, but like, subscribe, write a comment, and we'll see you folks next week.
Bye.
Yep. Bye, everyone. See you.